Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. The week of November 4th, and we're going to look at Eastern Standard Time, which is where we're at now. And the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius on Monday. When the moon is Sag, then there's a lot of exuberance. There's a lot of fast-moving energy. A fire sign, it acts on spontaneity. And the thing to keep in mind about this particular day is it has a lot of energy because of a configuration in the sky between the Sun and Saturn that speaks a lot about stepping up to responsibilities, wanting to make a mark. Now, this gets a little fuzzy because that Sagittarian streak of energetically moving forward can get sidelined or not have all the information in front of it. This can affect us even more if we're fire signs, if we have a very strong configuration of Sagittarius in our horoscope, depending where Sagittarius falls in your natal chart, what area of life is activated. That's going to show you where you're putting a lot of heart into this day. Overall, it can be opportunities, it can be feeling a sense of being supported, a sense of needing to move forward. But there's a piece here that, especially if we're starting something, remember the new moon happened the other day, we can move without all the information that's needed. So this is, examples of this are someone goes to sign up for something or do something, they don't have all the papers with them, they failed to read all the information they needed in order to follow through in the way they want. So don't let that happen to you. Take the extra step, do your due diligence. This is magnified in the morning, so if we can prepare well, we're much more apt not to fall into that space of, you weren't prepared. This can also be where you're told, no, you don't have what you need, or this isn't going to come together, or we don't have the funds or whatever to make this happen. And the person who's giving you that information doesn't have all the facts. So it really helps to take a breath, work on getting everything fleshed out and understood, because there can be a sense of confusion about this day. Now, this is a very dynamic week, not necessarily because of things happening in the sky, but because it is the United States election on Tuesday, and there is a lot of juice in the United States and in countries and people who observe the states as to what is going to happen. So Monday, as I said, can feel fuzzy, not a lot of information. Information is confused. So basically, don't necessarily put a lot of stock in what you read. Make sure that you have what you need to follow through, whether or not you live in the United States or it has anything to do with the election. But there's that kind of dynamic that's happening. On the other hand, on Monday, as I said, there can be a lot of tangents, opportunities, things that come in that you decide, am I going to take action on this? And that could be part of the confusion as well. So we want to be well prepared at the beginning of the week so that we know what we have to do. So if we have to deviate or move in a certain direction to grab something that's very compelling, we have the time and space to do that. On Tuesday, which is the election day in the United States, the moon starts out in the sign of Sagittarius, and there can be a confusion in the early morning. It can be, where am I going? Are people set up? Not necessarily about voting. It can be about going to your coffee shop or any way that you start your day. The best advice I can give here is you want to clear out the cobwebs. Really super important. The moon goes void, of course, at 5:23 a.m. So for those of you on the East Coast, you may just be waking up or not quite awake yet. So when the moon enters the next sign, that will be at 10:17 a.m., and that's in the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn is a sign. It's an earth sign. It's a cardinal sign, so it starts, it takes stock, it looks at its goals, and energetically, this day bodes well for people who are showing up, paying attention, doing their due diligence, goal-oriented, and this carries through on Wednesday and into Thursday. It's very strong energy. It's working off that new moon in Scorpio. And yes, it's true that when the moon is in the sign of Capricorn, people tend to be serious. They can be at times a bit humorless, or they can have a great sense of humor in a self-deprecating way. What they're aiming for is they're aiming to achieve something. The danger with when the moon is in the sign of Capricorn, again, this is strengthened depending on your natal makeup. If you lean this way as a very Saturnine person or have a strong configuration of Capricorn in your horoscope, or it's affecting a dominant house in your horoscope, avoid depression, avoid feeling down or defeated. You don't have to, actually. This day looks like we can meet whatever demon may present itself or whatever aggravant, especially earlier in the day, and get clear of that by the afternoon, evening. So I see this actually as being a very constructive day. What I like about it, considering the temperature of the United States and Election Day, is that it gives a piece of gravitas to the day. It gives, it leans towards a serious tone and people taking responsibility to what needs to transpire. The other thing that's going on, of course, as the moon moves through the sign of Capricorn, is the last aspect will be it meets Pluto in that last alignment with Capricorn. So certainly through the next couple of days, we're going to witness the holding on of status quo, but it's a plutonic movement. So it basically is suggesting that there will be seismic change in this election. The question is, what do you think that means? And I will be writing about that on the other layer of my blog. But for the podcast, I will just do what I do as an Aquarian and encourage people, if you are a United States citizen, do your responsibility of voting. If you don't think it makes any difference or you don't know who to vote for, well, certainly don't vote if you have no strong opinions on who to vote for. But if you don't think it makes any difference, then you need to really be reading what's been going on, because there is a difference in this particular election. And you, as a thinking person, will decide what you think that means. So Capricorn is about showing up, taking responsibility, or being so bummed out you don't do anything. And I always suggest that we do things that make us feel actualized in this lifetime, because you have the gift of life and being here, and you are here for a reason. Whether you believe that or not, or doubt it at times, you are here for a reason. So Wednesday the 6th has that moon in Capricorn, and it is very strong. Again, it is highly supported by planetary energy that suggests there is going to be a follow-through on whatever it is was initiated, especially on Tuesday, because that's an initiation day. Keep in mind that the moon is moving through Capricorn. Jupiter is still retrograde, so expect a hesitancy about doing things that are highly speculative, especially in investments and things like that. But there is that point of the retrograde, as I've been speaking for the past couple of weeks, where Jupiter retrograde is a great time to go over what you've learned, to really reflect on points of wisdom, to consider well what is just, and to act accordingly. So I see Wednesday as being a very strong day for follow-through and directively making things happen. Thursday the 7th, similar energy until we get to that void of course moon, which happens at 5:38 p.m. Now, the thing about this day, on Thursday, this is when we're really approaching the build-up of what happens when the moon makes its last picture in the sign of Capricorn, which is with Pluto in the late afternoon, early evening. So what we're building towards is irrevocable transformation and being okay with that. And this is hard for many of us because Pluto transits are never easy. That's not what they're supposed to be. Something ends. Think about the phoenix that rises out of the ashes. And if you've seen a Harry Potter movie, or if you know about mythology, the bird basically is reborn once it dies. And so that is the energetic symbol of Pluto energy. And in the sign of Capricorn, it's about coming to grips with the realization that certain ways things have been done in lockstep. Again, traditionally, how we see things as being are not going to be that way anymore. What's particularly affected are institutions, things that are rote, uniform, the way things are run. And what's interesting to me is when you think about young people, so especially Gen Z, who've grown up and actually the tail end of millennials who've grown up watching adults and situations occur pretty much from the turn of the century, the entry into this millennium. We've been witnessing and seeing things that older people say, this is not the way it's supposed to be. And so when we look at things that there's a denial that's been going on, as though, oh yeah, school shootings are an unavoidable thing. Well, if you look at the prior century, that wasn't really a routine. That wasn't something we thought we had to live with. And most other countries, other than the United States, do not think that is how people have to live. So there's been this denialism and this kind of acceptance of this is what the institution needs to have in order to exist. But that's all dismantling now. It has to. So as we go through a movement like this day, these couple of days, where the moon is in the sign of Capricorn, it moves through that sign, and its last aspect, its kiss-off, is with the planet Pluto, or the dwarf planet Pluto, whatever you want to call it. Astronomers still haven't totally defined what they think it is. But the energy of what that symbolizes is the god of death and irrevocable transformation. So the way things have been done up until this point in time must transition. And it is not normal or acceptable the way certain behaviors or institutions have been running, because they are basically on a death spiral. That's what's been going on. So for young people, they've been witnessing it. It seems like that's the way it goes. And a lot of them don't want it to be the way it goes. They want it to land in that death spiral and be done. They want to move on to a new way of being. And we'll be the architects of what that looks like. So again, we're looking at new moon energy, waxing moon cycle, moon in Capricorn over these few days, that's basically saying we are marching, moving towards change, real transformation. Now, what that looks like, I certainly have my theories, and as I say, I will write about it. But the mass movement forward of allowing, surrendering to this transformation is occurring. It's not about entrenching yourself and saying, no, we're going to hold on to the old form. The old form cannot hold anymore. It's untenable. So it's not necessarily all about the U.S. election. It's about anything that's going on in your life, in what's happening, that's about I'm actualizing, I'm goal-oriented, and I'm moving towards this thing that I don't quite know the outcome of, but I'm on board with the transition. One thing about a Pluto transit, and it's not easy to do, is when we decide we are invested and we're going with whatever it looks like, it actually becomes easier because we're no longer fighting something that we cannot hold, because we cannot hold it. It's not possible. It's not possible in a evolutionary context, because when we look at these kind of pictures in astrology, basically what's happening is we are going through a consciousness evolution, and we're either on board with it or we're not. And as anyone who's been through a psychotherapeutic process knows, becoming more conscious of something is not necessarily easy. And we don't know what the other side's going to look like. But it will eventually feel like we've arrived. So the moon goes void, of course, 5:38 p.m. on Thursday. It enters the sign of Aquarius very shortly after at 5:58 p.m. And then these days going forward are also good, productive days. One thing to mention, though, that evening of Thursday, tempers may be very high. People may be expressing anger, expressing desire, frustration. It's the best thing to do is articulate it in healthy fashion. Avoid people who are not doing that. And if you're feeling a lot of friction or frustration or anger, anxiety, just move it in ways that are healthy. Martial arts, walk, dance, do something that allows you to move it out. Have animated conversations with people who you trust, and really just move it in a way that's constructive. And it will pass. And once it passes, we have configurations that move forward on later in the evening on Thursday, Friday, absolutely, and once we get into Saturday. Saturday is a really nice day. It's not necessarily an easy day all the time because it's got a lot of fast-moving parts, but it's a really nice day for being with people who you want to connect with, as is Friday. These are, with the moon in Aquarius, when it's well aspected, we want to connect to like-minded people. We want to be in community. We want to imagine. We want to dream. We want to construct the future we envision or we'd like to envision. And the most exciting way to do that oftentimes is to put together possibilities with people who excite us, have ideas as well, and are thinking in terms of how those possibilities can work. So this can be a very celebratory day on Friday the 8th, as can Saturday the 9th. The thing to keep in mind on Saturday the 9th is that we do have a couple of pictures that are important to note. I think in the morning, for early risers, you really want to give yourself some really sweet meditation time. We want to tease out anything that feels well, certainly sad or confused. Again, we're on a precipice of a lot of changes, and that's not just in the United States. There's just a lot of movement that is speaking about moving into realms that are unfamiliar. And even when there are things that you want to have happen, it's once you get them, then now what do I do? Because what happens when we're dreaming towards a goal or something we want to achieve is once we've gotten close to it or it's coming into realization, then there's a lot of formulation that has to happen. And there can be this sense of, I don't know what it looks like. So that's why things like meditation, opening up to a sense of safety, even though it feels very unknown, are good things to do. The other thing to mention is when we get into mid-afternoon, later afternoon, picture in the sky between the moon and Uranus, and this, I'm always telling people when I see this picture, pay attention to where you are in space, because ideas are popping very quickly, like popcorn. And so people tend to be looking or going in different directions or on what intrigues them, and they aren't really paying attention to what's happening around them physically. And so if you're driving, if you're hurrying, if you're moving through space in a way where you're not focused on your body, that's not really the best place to be. On the other hand, it can be very dynamic if you're working on something where you're pushing the envelope or stretching into a realm that's unfamiliar to you. You can actually encounter something that might even initially startle you, but you're teasing out certain revelations, you're courting the unexpected. And when you do that, it can give you something that you hadn't anticipated or you didn't even know you were ready for. And you get to decide which pieces of it you want to keep. Because once we get into mid-afternoon, especially as we're moving into like 3:30 in the afternoon, we are in this really sweet spot of very positive energy. We can attract really good stuff to us. We can succeed at something we've been endeavoring to do. I mean, one thing that comes into mind is I think about somebody who's working on some kind of creative project and it's been fail, not quite right, haven't gotten it yet. And then with that Uranian energy, there's this, whoa, what if I did it this way? Or that was a spectacular fail. So now how, but I learned what not to do, and now I'm moving into this. And so there's just really good juice for inspiration and connectivity that is really positive. Talking to someone who you've been really wanting to meet in a way, a common ground, seeing what can ignite, very lovely for that. The moon goes void, of course, at 7:23 p.m. on Saturday evening. And then we've got this void, of course, moon in Aquarius, just sort of rocking and tumbling along. And that can be really fun for conversations, experimentation. Do not invest in anything. Don't think that, oh, I've met the love of my life and we're going to have an Elvis marriage. I mean, it's just, there's just a lot of things you don't know that have been put in front of you, and you're not going to feel the same buzz after it's over. Because when the moon's void, of course, especially, I mean, it depends on the sign, but in Aquarius, we are open to a lot of things. Things are interesting, but nothing has the glue that holds us. This can be a little different depending on your horoscope, but overall, That is the message. The moon enters Pisces at 11 o'clock that night, and it carries through Sunday. And that moon in Pisces is also well aspected for carrying the energy of whatever it was you were going for, wanting to achieve and make happen with that new moon kickoff, especially for people who are ready to embrace that irrevocable transformation. And on Sunday, especially, we can connect with really solid partners, make commitments that we are ready to follow through with. It's really terrific for encounters or situations where our dreams are on a very high octave. Have a great week. You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.